In amateur radio, operators call out across frequencies with a series of punctuated, monotone beeps known as a CQ call. When pronounced in French, the official language for international telecommunications, CQ sounds like the first two syllables of sécurité, used to mean pay attention. Over time, English speakers took it to stand for seek you. A CQ call is a reaching outward, an attempt to make a connection across a wavelength with someone you've never met. It means, essentially, is there anyone out there? And invites anyone listening to answer. If the caller is lucky, another user will hear and latch on, reporting their handle and location. These calls are broadcast across low frequencies, which bend with ease around the curvature of the Earth, allowing for contact across thousands of miles. Callers may speak into a handheld receiver, but Morse code takes less power and cuts through noisier stations, pushing audible messages atop the static. It's customary to send written confirmation of this interaction using a QSL card, typically about the size of a postcard. This is an exchange merely of record, not an invitation to continue the conversation. The postcards function like participation trophies. They're evidence that contact between yourself and another person has taken place. Evidence in a way that you exist. Others have verified it. One night years ago, when I was in my early 20s, I was up late visiting my uncle. With the bottle of bourbon I'd brought him on the table between us, he began telling me about my father. He was obsessed with ham radio, my uncle said. I'd never heard of ham radio, but apparently my dad stayed up every night making CQ calls. He'd crawl onto the roof to fix the antenna he'd salvaged from a nearby dump, scavenging for another after a winter storm snapped the aluminum at its brittle center. His first receiver, a second-hand model from the 50s, built with metal vacuum tubes in a pre-transistor era, weighed 100 pounds. They grew up in a family of 5 boys in an economically decrepit part of rural Wisconsin. Their father drank, their parents divorced, and they spoke of their late mother with reverence to her sainthood the way many men talk about their dead mothers. During my own childhood, my dad had the demeanor of fathers I'd read about in the historical novels I hoarded in my room. Stoic, religious, extraordinarily strict. I was terrified to leave food on my plate or hear his footsteps slow on the carpeted hallway outside my bedroom door, fearing he might open it and see the mess inside. There was no bigger crime to him than waste, or not respecting the things we had. My uncle's story was the first time I had access to my dad's need for anything other than order. I'd seen no evidence of desire beyond it. I'd never thought that he'd have looked for, of all things, connection. What does a CQ call sound like? I asked my uncle. He poured another glass of bourbon and held his hand in the air, replicating the beeps exactly, his finger pulsing to accentuate each one. How can you remember that? I heard it constantly, he said, every night, over and over. In order to operate a ham radio, you needed to get a license, my uncle said, and pass a Morse code test. Then you were assigned a handle. What was my dad's handle? WD9JHQ, he said without hesitation. My father started his own family a few towns over from where he was raised, a still rural, slowly developing subdivision, where I was filled with a basic sense of unbelonging that many children are prone to feeling. Beyond geographic remoteness and the impassable expanse between myself and what seemed like everyone else, I was raised with the tenets of Midwestern politeness. Be quiet. Don't touch. When I was grown, I moved to New York, where I was met with my childhood's opposite, the inescapability of other people. Living in a city can become a practice in containing the hostility we feel for the strangers we live alongside. Annoyance when a man's leg is pressed up against ours in a packed subway car, tempering our rage-filled glances at someone vocal frying to their friend or playing tinny music from a cell phone. The days are loud and long, and in some exhausted evenings, the simple existence of others feels like an inconvenience. Strangers invade the monasteries of our minds. Congestion puts those we don't know and will likely never speak to on brief and shifting stages, like department store windows about to be redressed at the end of a season. A girl slumped to her side on the subway, asleep on her way back from school. A man's face illuminated by his laptop's glow through the ground floor window as he sits alone in his apartment. A woman leaning into a post as she holds her cell phone tightly to her ear in an empty parking lot. I didn't expect the ease with which I'd come to project loneliness onto these moments. apply an Edward Hopper glaze over the crystalline banality of a stranger's routine. When I walk down a street at night and catch the corner of a bedroom beyond a window's curtain, or see a woman fumbling for her keys on her apartment's front stoop, I'm surprised by the longing I feel for the people I pass and the homes I'll never be invited into, or, perhaps more accurately, for the lives I'll never live. How quickly, then, my annoyance at the proximity of other people turns into tenderness. The grating of a subway car coming down the tracks, its sharp staccato screeching, becomes not the sound of aging infrastructure but a chorus of solitary voices, like searching CQ calls. The more I've watched companionless strangers, the more I've come to think that these moments are only lonely for those who are observing them. Perhaps we see loneliness in others simply to feel less lonely ourselves.